Haven't we all done some dumb things in life? Man, I had a friend, he tried to drink the world's hottest hot sauce. I think he had to have his stomach pumped. Man, I have another friend, he tried to take his Honda Civic off-roading. I think his car is like still stuck in the mud somewhere. Man, let me tell you about something dumb that I did. On my first date with my wife, I'm not making this up, I tried to pay with a coupon and I got into an argument with the server. I mean, hey, I can't let 5% go. Man, let me tell you about something else dumb that I did in my life. One of my friends in college had a roommate named David. Now, I had never met David before, but David was an upperclassman and I was a freshman. And so I'm over at my friend's house and he says, hey, you should go upstairs and wake up David. I figured that's a really good idea, so I did. What he didn't mention is David was like this giant guy and I'm this tiny freshman. So I go upstairs to wake up the giant. And instead of just waking him up lightly, I throw a water bottle at his face. Now, I think his nose is broken. He wakes up. I think he's bleeding. I take off. I'm out the door. I expect to hear these gargantuan footsteps behind me, but instead, I hear nothing. So I'm out in the driveway, and all I hear is David saying, "What's that kid's name?" Now, I expect that my friend has got my back, right? But my friend says back to David, his name is Luke Womack. Like, come on, man. So I'm taking off, and at that point, I'm scared to death. Like, for the next 6 months, I'm trying to evade this guy on campus. I mean, I'm like a ninja. I'm wearing all like black clothes. I'm going in and out of classrooms through windows. My friends are like, hey, are you going to the game tonight? I'm like, yes. They're like, are you not going to the game just because David is going to be there? And I would tell them no, but in reality, I was really afraid of this guy. Like, when is my destiny going to meet David? I knew that my time was coming. And so one day I'm sitting in the cafeteria and I feel this hand on my shoulder and I hear the sound, Luke Womack. I mean, I almost coughed up my quinoa. I turned around and sure enough, there's David. And I think, this is it. My destiny has met David. And David looks at me and here's what he says. He says, Luke, let's be friends. And you know what? For the next few years, we actually became friends on campus. Like, I dodged a major bullet there. Now, check this out. David meets his wife, Emily. And they want to do something I've never heard of before. I mean, I went to a large Christian university, and they wanted to do something that was totally mind-blowing. They wanted to be missionaries to an unreached people group. Like, I'd never even heard of something like that. I was so excited for them. And I remember I sat down with them and I said, man, David, this is great. Tell me, like, when are you guys gonna go? And David said, here's the deal, Luke. Here's what you don't know about being a missionary to the unreached. There's so many obstacles you have to overcome. Obstacles like parents and doubt and calling. And we've overcome so many of those obstacles already. But this one obstacle that remains, it has a shackle to the ground. It's student debt. He says, man, like from our time in college, we have a big pile of student debt, and it'll probably take us 20 years to pay it off before we can get to the field. Man, I didn't know what to say. They had these degrees that they really needed to get overseas, but they also had this big pile of student debt. They were stuck. And that's when I realized student debt isn't just a burden and a barrier for the goer. Debt also hinders the sender. It hinders the sender. Here I am trying to be sacrificial in my sending, but I can't because I'm shackled with their student debt. You see, the goer has debt. The sender has debt. But it's not just their problem or a my problem. It's an our problem. You see, we have a problem with student debt. If God tells you to go to the unreached, you can. Man, 56% of you in this room and around the United States have $29,000 in student debt. You can't go. See, if you want to go overseas, you typically need a degree. If you want a degree, you typically need to take out student debt. And if you have too much student debt, nobody is going to send you. And if you get married, it's not just $29,000, it's double that. You can't go. And if God tells you to send to the unreached, man, you can't do that either. Look around you. Most people have student debt. They're stuck, and so you are stuck too. Unless you plan to be disobedient, this covers 100% of us that have a problem called student debt. Are you with me? Man, after I graduated college, I thought to myself, I want to land a job with a fat paycheck and a big purpose. Anyone with me? Let me tell you what I got. I got a job with a fat paycheck. I was 23 years old, making 6 figures, but I had no purpose. So I'm working this purposeless job with a fat paycheck, and one of my coworkers that year made $400,000. Can you believe that? So I sat down with him and I said, man, like, how are you doing this? Like, do you like your job? And he says, Luke, I hate my job, but I make so much money here, I will never leave. Guys, he hated his job, and he was just doing it for the money. And that's when I realized it's not money that's going to make me happy. It's purpose. I needed a bigger purpose to live for. And so I circled back with my old friends, David and Emily. And I said to them, guys, maybe I too should quit my job and go overseas to the unreached like you. And David looks at me, and when David's about to tell you something important, he does this super awkward thing. He puts both his hands firmly around your head. He pulls you super close to his face. He looks at you right in the eyes. I mean, you feel like he's gonna kiss you. He doesn't kiss you, but you feel like he's gonna kiss you. So David has my head in his loving hands, as only he can do. And he says something to me that forever changed my life. He said, Luke, don't quit your job. He said, help people get there. Luke, don't quit your job. Instead, help people get there. Guys, I couldn't sleep all night. Suddenly, I had a purpose. I wanted to help alleviate student debt. I wanted to help every goer get there. In Romans chapter 10, Paul the apostle flips the script. He tells us about the importance of the sender. He asks these 4 rhetorical questions, and each of them has the same answer. They can't. He asks this, how then will they call on him in whom they have never believed? The answer is, they can't. And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? The answer, they can't. And how are they to hear without someone preaching? The answer, they can't. But guess what? The question that comes next connects to the start of the mission story. Are you ready? How are they to preach unless they are sent? The answer, they can't. When Paul sees the unreached get reached with the gospel, he shows us that the spark that starts the mission story is the sender. The sender starts the story. The sender starts the story. My question for you is this: what story do you want to start? Man, I was looking for purpose, so I decided to do something risky. I invited my friends, David and Emily, over for dinner, and with a friend by my side, we told them we would pay their student debt. And then they decided to do something risky. They believed us. They're like, guys, sure, like, sign us up, that's great. How much money do you have? We're like, well, technically we don't have any money yet, but we could go and get some. They're like a little less excited about the plan at that point, but still, generally on board. And so we didn't realize this at the time, but this was one of those moments that would change both of our lives forever. You see, I was helping David and Emily to pay their student debt so that they could go overseas sooner. But they were helping me to find a purpose. I could become a sender to help start the story of David and Emily. And that's when we started the Go Fund, a nonprofit to help missionaries with student debt get overseas sooner. And since then, we've made that same commitment for 87 missionaries. Guys, it's really simple. Aspiring missionaries with student debt apply with the Go Fund. We only look at those going long-term through their local church to an unreached people group. Now, once they're approved and overseas, we take over their student debt payments. We don't pay it all at once. We make monthly payments. And after about 10 years, their student debt is paid in full. So who does this matter for? Well, it matters for missionaries, right? Instead of being delayed, they're able to go overseas immediately and start doing ministry. It matters for the unreached. They're able to hear the gospel in their language for the first time. And it also matters for you. If you are not overseas today, you still have a critical role to play in missions, and it brings enormous purpose to your work. You may have a job that you hate, but you can help to fund the kingdom of God that you love. You may want a different career tomorrow, but you can help missionaries today. Man, you may think missionaries are more important than you, but a missionary can't do their important work without you. If you're not a goer, you have a critical role to play in missions as a sender, and it really, really matters. Some of you have probably been overseas. I remember going overseas once to India. I went into a Hindu temple, and I watched an old man 3 times my age bow down to and worship a stone. And it struck me in that moment. If nothing changes for this man, he's going to miss out on heaven and Jesus forever. Like, friends, this is not about student debt. And it's not just about David and Emily. It's about the unreached hearing the gospel in their language before it's too late. And the man that I encountered in India, the old man, he was lost because nobody had yet brought the good news to him. And I'm here to tell you today, we can change that story. Statistically, most of you won't go, but every one of you can send. And we have a very practical way for you to do just that. Today, I'm asking you to give $14 a month to the Go Fund. $14 is what it costs to fund one day of student debt repayment for a missionary to the unreached. Imagine what could happen in one day. Someone could meet the first Christian they know. Someone could hear the gospel in their language. Someone could place their faith in Jesus Christ. Don't believe the lie that one day doesn't matter. It does. Now, some of you may be able to give more than $14 a month. Maybe you can give $28 to cover 2 days, or $98 to cover 7 days, or maybe you can give less than that. You can't give 14, but you can give less. That's great too. $14 is just a starting point. But no matter what amount you choose to give, 100% of it will go directly toward paying student debt for approved missionaries with the Go Fund. That's 100%. We've covered all of our operating costs separately. Will you pull out your cell phone right now? Pull out your cell phone, wherever you are, pull it out, and go to thegofund.com/cross. And in a second, you'll see a QR code flash on the screen. You can scan that as well. So wherever you are, go to thegofund.com/cross or scan the QR code on the screen. I'd like to humbly invite you right now to take 30 seconds and sign up right away to begin giving monthly and start making immediate impact toward helping reach the unreached with the gospel. Throughout this conference, we'll be keeping track of our progress. Our goal is to raise up enough monthly donors to fund 10 new missionaries to the unreached. Guys, we've already picked these 10 missionaries out. They're pre-approved. They're ready to go. The only thing holding them back is their student debt. Like, I could call all 10 of them tomorrow and say, hey, you're in. Like, CrossCon did it. You don't have to wait 20 years. You can go reach the unreached today. Like, how cool would that be? Like, let's do that for them. At our booth or on our website, you can interact with a map that we've created where you can learn more about the stories of these 10 missionaries. And by the way, if you're at this conference in person, be sure to go back to our booth, and we'll actually give you a box to pair you one-to-one with one of these 10 missionaries. And if you're giving online, I will ship that to you in the mail. But remember, the sender starts the story. In 1792, there was a man named William Carey. Now, Carey learned that there were 23 national languages in India, and not one of them had the Bible in their language. He realized that India had a big problem with Bible poverty. He was a pastor in London. It's a 6-month and 10-day journey from London to India by boat. So what does he do? He gets up in the pulpit in his Baptist church, and here's what he says. He realizes he wants to help reach those in India. So here's what he says. I literally printed out what he said in 1792 in his Baptist pulpit in London. He says this: when we look at the world in all of the lostness, it is like we are lowering someone down a well or an abandoned mine to go exploring, to go find these lost people and tell them about God. And he looked at the crowd and he said, I will go down to the pit if you will hold the rope. That day, another man stood up and he said, I will hold the rope as long as I live. His name was Andrew Fuller. This is why when you become a monthly donor with a GoFund, we call you a rope holder. You're figuratively holding the rope for a missionary going to the mission field. Now, as a rope holder, we pair you one-to-one with a real missionary and send you regular updates from them from the mission field. You're not just giving to a fund, you're giving to a person. Andrew Fuller, he was a rope holder, and you can be a rope holder too. In October of that same year, Andrew Fuller opened the very first mission agency. He spent the rest of his life writing letters, raising funds, and raising people to help William Carey. He said, Lord, use my influence and my affluence to be a rope holder for William Carey. After 41 years in India, William Carey translated the Bible into the language of 300 million people. But there is no Carey without a Fuller. There is no missionary without a rope holder. There is no goer without a sender. The sender starts the story. Let's start some stories at Cross.